When we're creating a spreadsheet, one of the things we want to do is make it look nice, make it easier to read. A lot of times people say, I want to make it look pretty, but what they really mean is they want to format it so that people understand where the headings are, what the numbers represent, and so forth. So I have a simple one here that we've been working on in some of our modules, and I've just got raw data in here. I have text in some of the cells, I have numbers in other cells. And as we mentioned when we were inputting data originally, text automatically left aligns in the cell. Notice my January, February, March sales and expenses, even first quarter production is left aligned. And numbers automatically right align, so your ones line up with your tens, with your hundreds, and so forth. One of the things that I want to point out to you in case you weren't aware is if I came up here to cell B1 and input some data, I'm just going to write the word test here. Notice that it chops off cell A1 and I only see part of the information there. Now if I click on A1 I can see all of the information. One of the things you can do is look at our column width module, but I can obviously double click here and it would widen A1 and make that fit. This is important if you need that column to be that width, but we really don't. So I'm going to hit undo. And I'm going to hit it one more time because I don't want test in cell B1 because this is the title of my data, first quarter production. I might want it centered over the range of data. And my range of data runs from A1 to E5. So I want first quarter production centered over A1 through E1. So I highlight the range I want it centered between. And basically, there is a tool that will tell Excel, take all these cells, merge them together, and center this in it. And if you look up at your home ribbon, right here on the home tab, we're going to come over to the alignment grouping, and it's called merge and center. Pretty straightforward. So I click on that. Those cells now are one cell, and it's cell A1, and it has centered the data in there. In fact, if I try to click on B1 or C1 or D1, notice I'm getting that whole range and Excel sees that as one cell, cell A1. This is great because even if I do get in here and start changing the widths of my columns, this is going to adjust with those columns A through E and automatically always center over A through E. So that is how I fix that. Now I can obviously come in here and change the font colors. Let's deal with January, February, March in total here. Obviously these are headers. I want them to stand out as headers. A couple of things I might do. I might center them. I could bold them. I might use my company colors or some other kind of color to enhance them, make them stand out from the spreadsheet. I might want to use that same format for sales, expenses, and total. And if you saw our highlighting module, you'll know that if I hold down my control key, I can highlight those three cells also. So if I clicked and dragged for the first range, and then I held down my control key to select a range that wasn't next to it. All of them are highlighted, and then I can come in here and in my home tab, I'm going to come over here to alignment because usually we center our labels, and I'll choose the center alignment. Click on that, they're centered. And then I'm going to come over to the font group, and there's all sorts of things I can do here. One of them is bold. Might want to italicize them. I can click on that. If I don't like that, I can turn the italics back off just by clicking on it. As long as my text is still highlighted, my cells are still highlighted, I'm good. Maybe I want to change my font color. So I can click on the drop down for font colors and choose a color that works for me. I tend to like the blue shades, so maybe I'll go with a blue. I could even put in a background color. In my font grouping, the button that has the bucket has a background color option, so I click on that and it puts color behind my text. Now if I'm going to put color behind my text, I need it to be a contrasting color to that blue, so something light, maybe a pale orange or a lighter blue, something along those lines. Later we're going to look at table styles, and you can create tables and define things as tables within Excel, and there are formats that are predefined for you that you can use. But right now I'm just playing around with what's available to me on my home tab. So my Fonts, I could change those and come down here and maybe go with Aharoni. Sounds like macaroni, doesn't it? Aharoni. I could choose that. And then maybe I decide, you know what, I want these guys up here to be a little different. So I've highlighted B2 through E2, and I want them to stand out differently. So maybe I'm going to increase the font size there. Now you'll notice as I'm doing that, what's happening with my text. I'm going to have to fix my column widths at some point. But I've done that, and maybe I decided at that point, you know what? Maybe I should have done that over on A3 through A5. Maybe I want that same formatting there too. Well, you might recall we have something called the Format Painter. And if I click on it, it'll highlight or copy any of the formatting that I have highlighted. So I have B2 through E2 highlighted. It's got all this formatting. I click on Format Painter and click and drag it over the cells that I want to copy that formatting to, and they take it too. Now the question becomes, okay, how do I fix these columns, Barbara? Well, I can come up here between A and B, and notice my mouse, when I put it on the border between A and B, I get a double left and right arrow. And I can click and drag and change my column width like that. I can drag it long ways or short ways. On these four columns, if I highlight all four of the columns and I do a click and drag, they all become the same column width. But I could also do what we call autofit, which means I put my mouse on the border between two of them, get that double column width arrow, and double click, and it immediately looks at the width of all of these and finds what width we need. So January fits exactly the way it needs to. February fits exactly the way it needs to. Column D, notice, is not quite as wide, and neither is column E, because they didn't need quite as much space. So it didn't fit quite as much. Of course, now my header looks kind of weird, doesn't it? So I'm going to just bump it up real quick, and there's these two A buttons here in the font grouping, which will increase my font size, and I can just pop it on up there, and I'll make it kind of this color there. Okay, so that's text formatting in a nutshell. There's a lot of other things available to you. Just so you know, you do have a font dialog box that I can click and drop down, and this is that format cells dialog box that we used in earlier versions of Excel. We'll come back and look at that in a little bit. I also have an alignment dialog box. If I go to the alignment grouping on the home tab and click on that down arrow, there you go. There's all sorts of things here. Notice it's format cells. It's the same one that the font one brings down. It just brings you to a different tab.